Welcome to the All Hoops podcast. I'm your host, Steve Inman. I'm joined, as always, by co-host, producer to the stars. It's Chris Burrito. The eighth season of the All Hoops podcast begins with the highest expectations our New York Knicks have seen since we started doing this show. Gone are the days of Frank Ntilikina and wondering if Tim Hardaway Jr. could be a second option on a pretty decent team. Now the Knicks have real expectations, and with that, it's going to be a super entertaining season around the league. Today, we're going to talk the New York Knicks. We're going to give our best over/under win totals for the season and our annual award picks. It's going to be an action-packed show. Before we get to all that, Chris, my friend, how are you?
Hey Steve, happy to be here on All Hoops. Another season, another opportunity for our Knicks to be future NBA champions. I feel really good about our Knicks. I think we're destined for something great this year. I think the one thing that stands in our way is our ourselves. Um, but let's begin with the team like in its immediacy, right? Precious Achiuwa is injured. He's going to be out 2 to 4 weeks. So our bench is a little thin. So it's going to require a lot of our starters and some of the players we already have and some of the young guys. How do you feel to begin the season? And what is the best case scenario for you moving forward with this team?
Yeah, I mean, best case scenario is these injuries, especially these big guys, allows the Knicks to try some young players, and some of those young players pop and show that they can be legit rotation players. I think that's the best case scenario here. Um, Mikal Bridges, who has been really struggling with his jump shot, there's been a lot of talk about what he did to change it. Best case scenario is that is fixed right away. And Jalen Brunson obviously leads the charge. Karl Anthony Towns fits in well. OG Anunoby stays healthy. And they can show even with these injuries that they could be 8, 9 deep. That's the best case scenario for this Knicks regular season, and we'll see how it goes from there. Chris, what is the worst case scenario for this Knicks season? We should
Uh,
have done it the other way because usually on the negative one you're the positive one. But
you're right. I
go
think for
on.
me, okay, so I think for me, the worst case scenario, um, I think would be for me that Towns doesn't fit the bill that he was supposed to come. He's right now I peg him as the second best scorer on the team,
Yeah,
and I'm just afraid of the nights that he doesn't perform well enough. Like, say what you want about Julius Randle, that man could score and provide offense. Like, if anything else, that's what he could do. So now needs to do that and some defense, and I think we'd be in a lot of trouble if he doesn't fit that part of the equation. I'm really concerned about Bridges too. That being said, at least we can lean on his defense. And
yes.
but I am scared of that jump shot. If he doesn't get it fixed, we would have traded Dante DiVincenzo, who was a perfectly good shooting guard on our team, and we put ourselves in a hole and basically emptied out our treasure chest.
I mean, it's scary to think about, but
It's
like
it's like
every optimistic Nick fan who looks at those clips and hears Anthony Edwards caught on mic going, he lost his shot, like he changed his toe jumper. Everyone says, well, he doesn't need to play a lot of offense. He could be the fourth guy. He's mostly here for defense. No, you do not trade every draft pick you have to your crosstown rival, who both of these teams don't like each other. For them to make this trade, they had to fully believe they were getting a two-way star. And I believe they are getting a two-way star. And it might take him a month or two, again, best case scenario, back to fix that jumper. But they can't get into April, May and be like, yeah, like Mikal Bridges, we're not really sure we can rely on him. We're not going to even have him posting for threes because all of a sudden then the lanes are going to get clogged because you're going to be playing off of him the way guys would play off of RJ Barrett, right? When RJ Barrett was having a cold game, he's 1 for 9 or whatever, and they all of a sudden start clogging the paint for Randall and Brunson, and it just felt like you couldn't get any offense going. That's what this is going to be like if Mikal Bridges can't shoot.
yeah. Um, but to switch it over on a positive note, that gave me a lot of like reason to be optimistic. for some reason, the Knicks are able to find contributors somehow out of nowhere. And I know they're just rookies, and I don't anticipate them getting a lot of time. But all three rookies that we got, Ariel Achapori, uh, Tyler Kolek, and Pacomi Dadiet, like all of them look like solid contributors
The Knicks have been drafting
this
well.
season. The Knicks have been drafting really well, and listen, like whatever happens, happens. But I think we still need to address the front court issues that we have. We don't really have a feasible backup behind Towns besides Ariel Aporti. So that gives me cause of concern. I don't know where you put that in your like ranking of things, but like it's up there for me.
My biggest concern is going to be what you just said. It's the rim protection because Minnesota had Karl Anthony Towns for 9 years, and they decided after seven of them that this can't work. We cannot build a championship team with Towns as our rim protector. It doesn't work. So we're going to do something that everyone's going to make fun of us for. We're going to bring in a new rim protector and try to have them play together. And it was at times it kind of worked, but most of the time it did not work. And they said we can't make this work. We can't have these two guys playing together. We're going to ship Towns out of town. That's what they did. Now here we are trying to prove that this can work just with better players around Towns. I don't know if that's a good idea. Towns is older now. I think they have better wings who can kind of stop those guards before they get to the rim some of the time. But the end of the day, the Knicks' best defensive team is going to be with Mitchell Robinson at center and Towns playing the four. That's going to be a new thing. Can they figure out how those two play together? I don't know, but those are going to be very fascinating questions that are going to be very must listen to all Hoops podcast episodes in January and February. But for
And
now, Towns is the center, and you got to beat people with offense.
will Mitch Robinson play before the year ends?
2024, no, he will not.
Will he play before we go to the playoffs?
Yes.
Okay.
They're saying now December. I think that gets pushed to January, February. Who knows? But he will play unless he has a setback. Obviously, we're not doctors. We don't know. Where do we even we're not even in the room.
Yeah.
So like we don't know. But at the same time, they need to get him back and playing enough minutes to where he gets into April, May, and it's not a shock that Towns is kind of clogging his area. It's like they know where to go. So we'll see.
Um, so let's for a second keep on this dreamboat. Where do you think the Knicks are the biggest threat to the Celtics?
Absolutely. I think this
Okay.
is clearly the best team. They have wings. Whether you are worried about Mikal Bridges or not, you're not worried about his defense. You have him, you have OG Anunoby. Those are the two guys you're going to have guarding Tatum and Brown. You're not going to stop those guys. Those are elite two-way players as well, but you're going to be able to slow them down. Drew Holiday is a year older. Porzingis is always hurt. If I'm Boston, I'm more worried about Porzingis than the Knicks should be about Mitchell Robinson because he's just always hurt. And
Yeah.
so I think the Knicks clearly match up well with Boston. I think it's going to be a really fun opening night, Tuesday night, to see how they match up right away. Um, but I think the Knicks are clearly that number two team in the East.
Okay. I still think the Knicks, I think the Knicks probably move on from Mitch at some point, and I still think that the Knicks are in the right trajectory to be the best team in the East. I think the Celtics are going to have a hangover, um, and I think the loss of Porzingis is going to hurt them. We'll get into it with our over-unders, but I don't think they'll be as sharp as they were before.
So you think you're putting Knicks one.
I'm putting the Knicks one. They're going to finish as number one seed.
All right, I'm going to say two. I think one is not unreasonable. I think, as you said, Boston is just not going to take the regular season as seriously as the
Right.
Knicks.
Right.
They're not. So that I don't think that's
And
crazy to think.
and the Sixers are going to be hurt. Paul George is already hurt. Embiid's not playing back-to-back nights. I think he's playing. They're like 12 games. He's not going to play probably.
Tomorrow we have an auction. We have our first ever auction league fantasy draft, and I think you and I are kind of on the same page without even discussing it yet. Where we're gonna one of us is gonna nominate Joel Embiid and hope somebody else drives up that price. because no back-to-backs. It's clear the best regular season days are behind him, where you're not going to get those. I have to play all the games I can to get the MVP. It's going to be Tyrese Maxey on most nights, and then Paul George when he's healthy. And what else do they really have there? Caleb Martin? I don't know. So like
Yeah.
everyone thinks the Sixers are this team that's going to be the biggest threat to Boston. I don't see it at all. They're never healthy, and I don't see why another year older this is going to change.
That's why I picked up Andre Drummond because I know that's going to happen. Anyway, um, I'm really excited about this Knicks team. I think we listed the reasons why we should be optimistic and pessimistic, but overall, I think there has never been uh, a segue into a regular season for the Knicks as excited for this one, just because of like for the first time in my life, I think the Knicks just have a roster that makes sense and it could contend. That's just the bottom line. Whether we are or not, we'll see in June, but I think we're there.
I think that's great. All right, that's the New York Knicks. Should be a fun year. Let's move on to our NBA over-unders. Chris and I are going to go through our top three that we really like this year. Chris, you want to lead us off?
So I was talking about it earlier about the Celtics. I think the Celtics are just not gonna you're not gonna have Porzingis. You're not gonna have the same hunger as you did before you had the finals run. So I'm inclined to think that they're not gonna hit the 58 and a half mark. I would take the under on that one. And it's just generally speaking, it's gonna be hard to replicate all the success they had last year. The East is tougher. I think there's just a lot more competition than before. So I don't see it.
No, I'm with you on that one. I like that one a lot. I'm going to go with an over. I'm going to go with the Atlanta Hawks. This one to me is the one I'm most confident in, so I'm going with that one first. Chris, this team just didn't gel last year. It was your ball, my ball with Murray and Trey Young. They shipped Murray out of town. I think Jalen Johnson's ready to take a big leap forward. He gets his $150 million extension today. It's Trey Young, it's Jalen Johnson. That's your guys. And Trey Young to me is the 500 player. This is the guy that's going to have the ball in his hands the entire game. He's going to put up big numbers, and you're going to go 500 with Trey Young. Their over is 35 and a half. I think they're going to get it. I think they're going to have, a very competitive offensive team that's not going to play a lot of defense, but Quinn Snyder's still there. He wants to get as many wins as he can. There's no incentive for them to tank. I think Trey Young and you still have Clint Capella there too. I think this is a veteran group other than the number one pick they got. So I think 35 and a half, I'm going to go over.
I like it. The one I like, which is a little bit of surprise, the Chicago Bulls over 27 and a half. I know. You have Lonzo Ball, you have Zach LaVine. I think they can try to capture the magic they had a few years ago, and I think they'll be successful. I mean, they will at least be good enough to beat that 27 and a half number. I don't know if they're a playoff team, but I just think that there's enough vets on this team to care for them to get over that number.
I agree with this just for different reasons. It seems like to me, ownership just really wants to be a nine seed. They want to make sure people are semi invested in this team all year. And to do that, they're going to have to win 30 plus games. And I think they're going to do it. I don't think they're going to bottom out. I don't think they're going to try to tank. I don't think they're going to try to sell off veteran pieces at the deadline. I think if they had the choice, they would have the exact same team this year. And DeRozan decided, I'm going to go get paid. I'm going to Sacramento. They lose him. They wind up swapping Caruso for Giddy. Lonzo, is he healthy? It's a great story if he is, but you have him, Levine, and now Giddy for two spots, basically. So how does that play out? I think, none of those, like Levine can shoot, but the other two don't really shoot well. So how is that going to play out with the three of
Well,
them?
Lonzo was a much better three-point shooter before he got injured.
He was. The work with Fred Vincent definitely helped, but now this is 2 years without playing. And I still don't trust him as a shooter yet. But
I
the
mean,
point I was
I'd probably go
it's
Giddy.
just a mismatched roster of a bunch of guys you kind of like. The Sumu's still there. I think he's going to play a lot.
Yeah.
Vucevic is still there. He's going to put up good numbers, but he's not going to play any defense. So it's like, what is this team? It's just a bunch of weird characters and players. But at the same time, again, if you want the 9 or 10 seed, there's not a lot of competition for it. So I think there's going to just be a ton of games in February, March, and April that teams are just laying down for them. And I think this is going to be an easy over.
So this is the one I feel the most confident about, and it's the Memphis Grizzlies over 46 and a half. The reason being that this is a much better roster than the Grizzlies team that was one of the best teams in the Western Conference like 2 seasons ago. I forget how long it was. And you'll have a motivated Ja. And I strongly believe that this Grizzlies team is a lot more balanced than when it was a few years ago. And I think they're primed to make a big run once the playoffs start. But for now, I think they're going to beat that number, 46 and a half.
I like it. I think we're we're on the same page with a lot of these right now. I'm going with the under Clippers 35 and a half. Chris, it's kind of been a disastrous first year of this new arena for the Clippers. I don't know if anybody's noticed,
And it
but
hasn't even
Paul
opened
George
yet.
left and they didn't replace him with anything. They gave Kawhi Leonard a supermax extension, and Kawhi Leonard is hurt. They tried to make a big fuss
So,
about him being kicked off Team USA. No, no, that's not how it went, blah, blah, blah. He was kicked off because his knee just wasn't right. And now there he's getting, he's out indefinitely. We don't know what's going on there. So basically, what their plan is they're going to have basically what the Hawks are doing, a very Trae Young centric ISO ball with James Harden, but James Harden's 10 years older than Trae Young and doesn't have a supporting cast. It's going to be what? James Harden and Norm Powell and Terrence Mann and Zubac. This
you
is a
see,
terrible team. And
I think I agree with everything of all your picks. The thing that the Clippers gives me pause is their coach. I think Tyronn Lue is a really good coach.
right, the two things going against this are Ty Lue is a very good coach.
Oh, Ty Lue, sorry.
Ty
Yes.
Lue is a very good coach, and all their draft picks are going to Oklahoma City. So the last thing they want is to have
Right.
like
They're
Cooper
motivated.
Flag going to Oklahoma City, and then this horrible trade for them turns into like the worst trade of all time if Cooper Flag becomes a star in Oklahoma City. So it'll be very interesting to see how this one plays out, but they don't have any money and they don't have any draft picks. So they don't really have a way to go out and get more help in February should they want to improve this team. So I think they're probably going to go the other way. I'm taking the under. And my last one was the Denver Nuggets. I'm taking them over 50 and a half. They have the best, to me, they have the best player in the world. You're the best player in the world. You still have Jamal Murray, who I know had a very bad Olympics. Everyone wants to talk about that, but he's still a good player. You still have Aaron Gordon there for another year. And I think Michael Porter has a solid season. That's a pretty good four. They lose KCP. I'm comfortable with Christian Brown stepping into that starting five. The only concern here is if you get hurt, you get any of those five guys hurt, you really don't have any replacements. And
You have Russell
Westbrook
Westbrook.
there, he's really the only guy. They're really going six deep right now.
Yeah.
So I think it could be a concern, but the Joker has played every game basically his whole career. So I would think if he's out there, they are the favorites to win more often than not. And I'm going to take them over 50 and a half. I do put this as my third one, though. I think I feel much more confident in the Hawks and Clipper one we discussed before.
Yeah, I see it. Let's move on to our award predictions. We do it every year, and most times we both don't get it, but I think this
Hey,
year,
I killed it last year. I don't know what you're talking about. Go on our Instagram right now and go look at that. I basically got them all right. And yes, I know I picked a lot of favorites, but whatever wins, right?
sure. Um, so award predictions. I love yours, but I'm going to talk about mine real quick. I picked Jalen Brunson because I think that the Knicks will be the number one seed in the East. I think you have the narrative going for Jalen, and then you have the stats. He'll have the stats to sort of back up the MVP conversation. Um, and I just think that's going to be a great storyline all season. So I think that's gonna probably I feel really strongly that Jalen could be it if the Knicks have a top seed. Yeah,
I had
unmute.
the mute on. Oh, I hope you're right on this one. I definitely am rooting for this pick to happen over mine, but I'm gonna go with SGA at plus 380. I think, every year he gets a little better. Now all of a sudden they're going to be more recognized. They're on TV more. He's still going to be the same elite player he was last year, if not a tick better. He's got a great team around him, but he's still clearly the number one guy. If he's the best player on the best team, I think that puts him in a great position. And you were
Mhm.
telling me before the show, and I think you're 100% right with this. It's the stats plus the narrative. And so Jalen Brunson has both of those. I think SGA does too.
I love your pick too. I think there's a really strong case for SGA too.
All
Um,
right, go ahead. Rookie of the year.
no, rookie of the year. So I really love this kid, Reed Shepherd out of Kentucky. He's at the Houston Rockets now. Um, I feel like with a player like that, he has a lot of opportunity to make some noise. And the Rockets were one of these teams that were like, they were kind of interesting down the stretch. Um, and I think if Reed sort of helps them be a play-in team in a tough Western Conference, I think there's a case to be made that Reed Shepherd could be Rookie of the Year.
I think that's a good one. This one was the one I had the hardest time with of all of our award picks. Just there wasn't a guy in a great situation. Like Shepard, I like a lot, but there's so many guys on that Rockets team I wasn't really sure how much he'd play. So I was trying to think of a guy who's going to put up numbers, play enough, but also could be on a team that's going to be recognized enough where he could get that award. I'm going to go with Steph Castle plus 1,000 here. Um, he's looked pretty good in the preseason. I know I poo-poo the preseason every year, but this is where we get to see these guys, right? He's playing with Chris Paul. The last time Chris Paul had a young guard, he kind of helped shape him, and that was SGA in Oklahoma City. So I kind of like that. And my guy Devin Vassell is already hurt. They're going to reevaluate him next month. So the minutes should be there to play with Chris Paul. So if Shepard can, he can drive, he can shoot, he can kind of do everything. This is the guy I probably would have taken number one overall if I had that pick. It just depends on how much he's going to play. And then again, the narrative here is Wemby, Wemby, Wemby. And then when you don't think about Wemby with this team, you're thinking about Chris Paul. So how much attention does a Steph Castle get for a voting? I don't know, but this is my pick, and I don't feel great about it, but I like him.
No, but I think he's being placed in a position to succeed,
Yeah.
and there is that pathway for him to like exceed in that role too. So good. So who's going to be your sixth man of the year?
I'm going with Dante DiVincenzo. This one's going to hurt Knick
Okay.
fans, but yeah, plus 1,500. I like the odds. I think, this is a guy who probably is going to get a lot more recognition, even in Minnesota, than he got in New York, just because of the fact of what he did in the playoffs. Now he's an established guy. The Minnesota team is very good, but also desperately needs a guy like him off their bench. He said the Knicks 3-point record last year, despite not really playing a lot up until December, January, right? So I think he's going to play a lot in Minnesota. And I think, there'll be games where Edwards is the point guard, Conley is on the bench with a DiVincenzo. So I think he's going to play enough. He's going to get enough crunch time minutes to put up numbers. And I think he's going to be on TV. And he's going to put up big numbers shooting. So let's go with Dante.
So that's a great argument for Dante. I mean, I love that pick. I'm gonna pick Deuce McBride. I think Deuce is gonna be catapulted into a role where he's gonna do a lot of the scoring
Okay.
for this bench unit, unless they move him to the starting lineup, which is a very strong possibility.
Yeah.
But I think Deuce sort of fits the bill of what you want out of a sixth man. Um, he actually, in some ways, reminds me of Quickly without the facilitator aspect of it, but like I think Deuce would be a great six-man option.
I just don't think the Knicks are going to go to their bench enough where he's going to put up numbers. Like, look at DiVincenzo, for example, right? Like, he was in
Yeah.
that six-man role kind of with the Knicks last year and didn't really happen, right? He didn't even have enough minutes to be on the most improved group. So we'll see. I hope, yeah, and you got a couple of Knicks here. I hope you're right. Defensive player of the year, we both have the same guy. Not a lot to say here other than we love Wemby. Wemby's the favorite. Wemby's awesome. And I think the Spurs are going to take a big leap this year.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, Wemby could have won it as a rookie last year, so, and he was my pick last year. Anyway, Wemby's gonna be our guy. Who's your most improved?
My guy Jalen Johnson, he actually got paid today, 5 years, 150 million. I don't know if that helps or hurts his chance of getting most improved. Usually it's for the guys on the come up, right? He just got paid, but he had an amazing year last year. And I think just a full year as, the number two option in this offense, he's going to put up better numbers. He's got Trey Young to throw him oops, and he can kind of do everything on the court. I think the Hawks are going to be feisty. I like Jalen Johnson.
I'm gonna go with Cam Thomas. I think the opportunity is gonna be there. I think I don't think the Nets will be as bad as we think they will be. They'll be bad, just not
Now,
that.
Sean Marks can help it. He wants him to be bad.
Cam Thomas, I think, is gonna make a leap forward though. Is one of the best, is one of the league's best scorers, maybe like a top five scorer in the league.
I mean, if he becomes a top five scorer, you got to give it to him, right? But I think the stigma around him that he's just like a scorer, he doesn't pass, he doesn't defend, I think that's going to just stick with him, whether it's fair or not. And I don't think he's going to get this thing. I mean, even if he puts up 25 a game on a terrible team, I don't think he's going to get the recognition he deserves just because of the fact that everyone kind of thinks he's a me first ball hog guy. Like you remember the interview about Steve Nash, he's talking about his coach and he eye rolls during this thing. And it's like that's what people think of when they think of Cam Thomas. And I don't think Brooklyn's going to be in the national attention enough to change that stigma. So, as you said, if he becomes a top five scorer in the league, you got to give it to him. But I think unless he
Yeah.
does something heroic,
I
it's
think
not going to be him.
I think he's just gonna have a lot of that attention as a scorer over there. I think that like he's my Steph Castle of picks. It's just hard. I think most improved to me is like a guy who could become an all-star, right?
Right. I don't see that from Cam. I think he's a
Or like
gunner, and I think he's a guy you want on your fantasy
wait,
team.
who won it last year again? Do you remember?
Who won most improved?
Yeah,
Maxi.
Maxi.
Maxi's part of winning.
Right. The year before that, I think it might have been Garland.
Okay.
Before that, it could have been Randall.
Yeah, before that it was Randall. But see, all these guys have something to do with the team taking a step forward. That's the thing.
No, no, no doubt. So the thinking here with Cam Thomas is that he's going to be one of the league's best scorers, and I think that's why you give it to him. But I totally see the team success being a part of it too, though. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. All right, last one. Coach of the year. Chris, this one's going to blow your mind. I'm taking your guy, Mike Budenholzer. He is
He's
back in the
my guy?
NBA. He's not my guy. I think he's a terrible coach. I don't get the hire, but at the same time, this is a team in Phoenix that just had the wrong coach. They had a defensive coach. All they want to do is score. They have three elite scorers, and I think they're going to improve significantly this year, solely for the fact that I think they were embarrassed of how things went in the first round in Minnesota. They're going to have a new system in place where it's run and gun, shoot and jack up threes. I think they're going to put up a ton of points. Durant and Booker will be all stars. Beal will bounce back. And I think this is a team that can win 50 plus games. And Budenholzer is going to get that coach of the year.
I see it. I actually do see Budenholzer. Word out of camp is that he's sort of like really preaching spacing on that
That's what he does. At
Suns
least in
off.
the regular season. Just don't ask him to adjust to anything in the playoffs. But this is the regular season awards. They all are.
So similar in the theme that I've been talking about this whole podcast, I think the Knicks are going to be a top seed. I think Tibbs is going to get a lot of credit for figuring it out. So I think Tibbs is going to be coach of the year.
Again, another one I hope you're right with. All right, Chris, final thoughts. Rookie extension day. We already talked about Jalen Johnson. There were some crazy extensions today. Jalen Suggs getting the full max, 5 years, $150 million. Either they gave him a bad deal or they know something we don't about him improving as an offensive player.
I know. I mean, there were guys like Moses Moody who also got he got a nice deal actually.
I think his was a
But
3 for 39. That's fine. 13 is
it's fine.
fine, but 30 million a year for Jalen Suggs. Oh,
And the worst part is that he's like a similar player to Cole Anthony. Like
yeah.
in that they're both undersized guards. Like it's okay if you have one of them, but two of them, I feel like,
It's just tough because like I kind of was hoping they would be able to find a way to bring a point guard in. And it seems like this is their roster now. You have Suggs, Franz, and Paolo all going to be making big money. That's your team. You have Isaac, you have some other interesting guys on the peripherals, but they don't really have the money unless they go out and get a rookie to be that star point guard for them. So I don't really know how they take a huge step forward unless Franz, Paolo, and now Suggs are those guys.
I don't see it either, honestly. But you know
All right,
what,
Chris.
Steve? NBA season is here, and I'm so excited, bro.
Yes, it's going to be an amazing time. That is going to do it for us here on the All Hoops podcast. Thank you for listening on Apple and Spotify and wherever else you get your podcast and watching us on YouTube. We will be back soon to talk more NBA action. Enjoy the regular season.
Yes, guys. See you soon.